Pelham Grenville Wodehouse is, or also known as Plum, childhood school holidays, actually from 14 to 21, so also after his school, were spent in Stableford on the Shropshire-Staffordshire border. His family moved from Stableford Farm House to the smaller Old House after his father retired from the Hong Kong civil service, where I believe he was a magistrate. And he said, "My happiest days as a boy were spent near Bridge North. The only thing I didn't like in my formative or Stableford period was the social stuff. Owners of big estates roundabout would keep inviting me for the weekend. Picture to yourself a Trappist monk with large feet and a tendency to upset tables, with priceless china on them, and you will have the young Wodehouse. The solution to the mystery of mixing with the county is that my brother Armin was very popular. He played piano like Gershwin and conversed pleasantly on any subject. Sybil Corbett from Stableford was actually named in his novels. Sybil reared ducks for shooting, but according to Wodehouse, she treated them so well that when they were sold, they would approach their would-be assassins for food rather than flying away. He would later describe Shropshire as the nearest earthly place to paradise, miles of smiling countryside. Following his popularity, Wodehouse moved with his wife Ethel to La Tourcaise in northern France and to the US, where he was in La Tourcaise. He was captured by the Third Reich. Spotting the approaching stormtroopers, he announced, "Oh God, don't look now, but the Germans are coming." They spent the rest of the conflict under a sort of house arrest. The couple were offered a flight back to Britain by the RAF, but declined because it would have meant leaving their dachshund Jed behind. Wodehouse went on to play a part in Joseph Goebbels' propaganda machine, making 5 broadcasts for the Third Reich. He was certainly compliant, but MI5 let it be known that he was more than this, damages his reputation. His broadcasts appeared to be satirising the Third Reich, but maybe because the situation was so serious, nobody in the UK picked up on this at the time, nor in the US where the target audience really lay, where he simply came across as a spoilt English snob. After all, it was Wodehouse's character, Roderick Spode, the 7th Earl of Sidcup, who lampooned Sir Oswald Mosley, who probably prevented the British Union of Fascists from gaining popular support. The Saviours of Britain, nicknamed the Blackshorts, are a fictional fascist group led by Roderick Spode, who worked by day as a retailer of ladies' underwear. Bertie Wooster describing them, "It's all about time," I proceeded, "that some public-spirited person came along and told you where to get off. The trouble with you, Spode, is that just because you have succeeded in inducing a handful of half-wits to disfigure the London scene by going around in black shorts, you think you're someone. You hear them shouting, 'Heil Spode,' and imagine this is the voice of the people. This is where you make your bloomer. What the voice of the people is saying, look at that frightful ass Spode swanking about in footer bags." Unwelcome in the UK, Wodehouse moved to the Hamptons, New York, where he died on February the 14th, 1975, aged 93. As has been said, P.G. Wodehouse's Shropshire is more like Shropshire than Shropshire is. Stableford's neighbouring parish of Badger becomes Badgerwick in Money for Nothing, 1928, whilst close by parishes Ryton and Chesterton appear under their own name. Bridgnorth also receives a name check in Do Butler's Burgle Banks, where Wodehouse did indeed get a job in a bank. Rutton could be Ryton or Roton, while Chesterton and Warfield are mentioned using their actual names. Eckerton is clearly Ackerton and Warfield is sometimes called Warbury. Wodehouse's earliest and most famous creations is Blandings Castle, Lord Emsworth's stately pile in Shropshire, which first appears in Something Fresh, 1915. As Evelyn Waugh famously observed, the gardens of Blandings Castle are the original garden from which we are all exiled. The name has become a byword for the English country house in the lingering twilight of the Edwardian summer. It's a place of apparently undisturbed by taxation, inflation, or even by any degree of provision for the Lord Emsworth's 10 sisters. The scale is suggested by a run of grand rooms, including a vast hall, which doubles as an additional living room where Lady Constance provides afternoon tea. At first described, the house is seen at night. After an eternity of winding roads, darkened cottages and black fields and hedges, the cart turned into a massive iron gate, which stood open, giving entrance to a smooth gravel drive. After nearly a mile, lights appeared as shrubberies ended and smooth lawns and terraces began, blazing down on the travellers from a score of windows, with the heartening effects of fires on a winter night. The house is the noble pile of early Tudor building. Its history is recorded in England's history books, and Vuillet de Luc, an authority on French medieval architecture, has written of it. The River Severn runs through the estate, and from the battlements the Wrekin can be glimpsed. Blandings Castle, country seat of the feather-brained Lord Emsworth, could be Patshull Park, Weston Park, Dudmaston Hall, Chillington Park, Apley Hall, or even further afield. But there may have been consensus on Apley Hall, where it's rumoured to be where Hitler had believed to be the perfect place to retire after conquering England. However, Wodehouse is known to have visited and been impressed by Weston Park, although he's also known to have stayed at Apley Hall. My first job was with Tower Housewares, the non-stick frying pan people, based in Swanbourne, not far from Stableford. I became a rep for them, and they arranged a clay pigeon shoot as a team building exercise, which incidentally I loved. In the restaurant I was confronted with avocado pear for the first time. Being told it was pear, I dug into it, also consuming the skin, which I did find which I didn't find that agreeable. I'm sure that P.G. Wodehouse would have appreciated the humour in this. Blandings Parver is a small fictional hamlet 2 miles from Blandings Castle. The people of the village enjoy much revelry at the annual school treat, held on August bank holiday every year in the grounds of the castle. Much to Lord Emsworth's horror, not only did his garden become an inferno of children, tents and paper bags, but he's required to wear a top hat and make a speech. In fact, reading that, I'm reminded of Condover Fates, which were held at Condover Hall that we knew as the blind school. And I don't think there was a lord wearing a top hat, but everything else sounds so familiar to me. Blandings Parver is known for taking children from London in need of fresh air, such as Gladys and her brother Ern. Market Blandings is a fictional town, being the closest town to Blandings Castle. It's the site of the Emsworth Arms and a host of other pubs such as the Beetle and Wedge, the Blue Boar, the Blue Cow, the Blue Dragon, the Cow and Grasshopper, the Goat and Feathers, the Goose and Gander, the Jolly Cricketers, the Stitch in Time, the Wheat Sheaf and the Waggoner's Rest, as well as a useful railway station from where a fast train can get you to Paddington in under 4 hours. And not included amongst the pubs close by the castle is the Anglers, or the Anglers' Rest, which is located in or near a small English town. About a mile or two up the river from the Anglers' Rest stands an ancient and historic public school, the voice from the past. In the neighbouring town, in the neighbourhood of the town, there seems to be a golf course, those in peril on the tee, and also a racehorse course, Garlanite. This sounds remarkably like Shrewsbury to me. A sleepy old place, Market Blandings is one of England's most picturesque towns, and has an air of having been the same for centuries. The Lychand Church has a 4-square tower, the shops' red roofs and the upper floors of the inns bulge comfortably outward. The most modern thing there is a moving picture house, which calls itself an electric theatre. It's covered in ivy and features stone gables. The only other up-to-date location is the shop of Jono Banks hairdressers. The only taxi cab in the town is the station tracks driven by Mr. Jono Robinson, the chemist, and is also the chemist is also run by Mr. Bulstrode. In Apley Hall, if Apley Hall really is Blandings Castle, then Market Blandings is likely to be Buildwas. Although I'm sure that Buildwas never had so many pubs. Could Buildwas have been Blandings Parver and Ironbridge Market Blandings? However, if Weston Park is Blandings Castle, then Shifnal could be Market Blandings. It does, after all, have enough pubs. The Emsworth Arms is fictional inn on the High Street in Market Blandings. The Emsworth serves fine ale and makes an ideal mating place for conspirators not wishing to be overheard, as well as providing accommodation for anyone wishing to be near Blandings Castle, but lacking an invitation. There's a busy bar downstairs and a more genteel dining room on the first floor, with comfortable armchairs, ideal for anyone in need of a nap. The garden stretches down to the river with many shady nooks and summer house, seemingly ideal for conspirators not wishing to be overheard and weary minds and bodies needing rest. The proprietor, G. Ovens, makes excellent home-brewed ale. If I am correct that Ironbridge is Market Blandings, it would make more sense that this is the Tontine, although the gardens sound more like the Valley Hotel. Ming Hall is a fictional house in the neighbourhood of Blandings Castle. Ming is home to Colonel Fanshawe, his wife and their attractive daughter Valerie. The butler is a friend of Beach, and the two of them occasionally share a glass or two in the evenings. The house's coal cellar has at least on one occasion served as a makeshift prison. Matchingham Hall is a fictional location, being the seat of Sir Gregory Parslow. The hall's neighbours, Blandings Castle, lies near the village of Matchingham. In the grounds resides the pride of Matchingham, Sir Gregory's pig and rival to Lord Emsworth's, mighty Empress of Blanding, and latter the Queen of Matchingham, replacement of the pride. The telephone number there is Matchingham 83. The fictional village of lies adjacent to Matchingham Hall. Beefy Bingham inhabits the vicarage there, and living being in the grant of Lord Emsworth and his dog Bottles is well known from the Blue Boar on the High Street to the distant Cow and Caterpillar on the Shrewsbury Road. Dver Castle is the setting of Much a Gentleman of Leisure. Dver is a large old place in Shropshire with heavy grey walls to defend against Welsh marauders, but a comfortable interior. It's owned by Spenny, Lord Dver, and run by his rich uncle Sir Thomas Blunt. One of the oldest and grandest houses in England, Dver is famed for an old ghost story handed down from generation to generation. There is a picturesque rose garden and a lake with an island, ideal for young lovers. In the Gem Collector, an early version of this story, the house is called Corvan Abbey and was owned by a former New York policeman, McCarran. By the 20th century, the abbey was a modern country house. The owner, a rich American who created it, the handsomest building in Shropshire. This story was rewritten as A Gentleman of Leisure in 1910 and the building has, perhaps more convincingly, become Dver Castle, and its owner the British brother-in-law of the resident Earl. In those days before the Welshman began to expand his surplus energy in playing football, he was accustomed, whenever the monotony of his everyday life began to oppress him, to collect a few friends to make raids across the border into England, to the huge discomfort of the dwellers on the other side. It was to cope with his habit that Corvan Abbey in Shropshire came into existence. To my mind, this all sounds a lot like Weston Park, with its follies and boating lake, a boating lake across which I had the privilege of watching Jackie Wilson perform. Apley Hall is the fictional Shropshire seat of Bertie Wooster's uncle Willoughby in Jeeves Takes Charge. Much Middleford is the fictional village located in Shropshire. It is the home of cricket enthusiast Joan Rumley in 5 short stories published between 1905 and 1909, of Wilmot Motti, Lord Pershaw in Jeeves and the Unbidden Guest, and Bruce Carmyle in The Adventure of Sally. It's also the birthplace of Jeremy Garnett in Love Amongst the Chickens, spelled Much Middleford in some editions, Anne Marston in Something Fresh, and Sally Fitch in Bachelors Anonymous. Wodehouse used Bridgenorth and Stableford, often as much Middleford, fold, in obvious disguise. The clue is probably in the train that took the Wrekin and the Wrykin and turned them into Wrykin. Further, Sally Fitch and Gerald Garnett, Ash Marston, all claim to have been born at the vicarage at Much Middleford fold. Thus, Much Wenlock would seem to be a good contender for Much Middlefold. Smith is from Corby Hall in Much Middleford. In leave to Smith, Much Middleford on the Hill and Lesser Middleford in the Vale are located near Beckford College in A Perfect Uncle. The perfect title, Anne Gethrin, is recruited to play cricket for the Much Middleford in Joan Romney's story, Personally Conducted. When Mike Jackson meets Smith at Sedgley School, he is delighted to find that they both come from Shropshire. Mike is welcomed by Mr. Outwood as coming from Crofton in Shropshire, near Brittleford. This is Corfton, near Bridgenorth, and Mr. Outwood goes on to speak of the famous Clunic Monastery of St Ambrose at Brindleford. This is the Clunic Monastery that lies 7 miles from Bridgenorth, and Smith claims to live at Croftby Hall. This is Corfton Hall, near Bridgenorth, which he says lies near Much Middlefold. Beaconsfield College is a fictional school setting of the novel A Perfect Uncle and several short stories, although it's clear that P.G. Wodehouse was much influenced by his childhood years in East Shropshire. Certainly the area around Bridgenorth is much in evidence, and quite possibly the Coalbrookdale Gorge. But to my mind, this is more likely to be a description of the houses, villages and towns as simply amalgams for locations across East Shropshire.